Welcome to a brand new series of Get Growing, the Kiwi Garden show that's here to help you get the most out of your plot. Whether you've been gardening for ages or you're just starting out, we gardeners all have one thing in common. We get a real kick out of growing stuff and sharing our love of gardening with others. And that sense of community and Kiwi can-do spirit is what this series is all about. In our first episode, I'll show you how easy and satisfying it is to grow your own food and flowers from tiny seeds and cuttings. New Zealand Gardener editor Joe McCarroll talks natives and camellias with the evergreen Jack Hobbs. And landscape designer Justin Newcombe helps two young inner city chaps sort out their bomb side of a backyard.
It's an opportunity to start again because we've got no choice.
We've got all that and more coming up, so let's get into it. Let's get growing. So whether you've got a small city garden or an ever-expanding country estate like mine, it makes really good sense to learn how to grow your own plants. And today I'm going to show you 3 basic methods of propagation, starting with how to sow seeds. Now, sowing seeds is really cheap, just for a couple of dollars you'll get a packet of seed, and by sowing from seed you can grow some more unusual things that you can't get otherwise, like this fabulous heirloom corn, or these gorgeous, rare, red-flowered broad beans. Sowing from seed also means you can save heaps on your grocery bills with a low-cost veggie garden. Now, some seeds, such as carrots, really need to be sown direct, but others like to be pampered a little bit, and so I tend to start mine off in pots first. I tend to just use these recycled plastic plant punnets, but you can use anything you like, ice cream containers, yogurt bottles. Just make sure you put some drainage holes in the base, and make sure they're big enough to sustain your seedlings for the first, say, 6 weeks of their life, if it's going to take that long. I sowed some broad beans in some trays over here, and you can see they're barely up, and yet their big long tap roots are all poking out the bottom. When you're sowing seeds, don't be tempted just to sow them straight into soil out of your garden, because you don't know what sort of weeds it might have in it, and also it tends to be too gluggy and thick for your seeds. It's far better to actually just go and invest in a bag of seed raising mix. It's not expensive, it's sterile, it's weed free, and you know they're going to get off to a good start. To germinate successfully, seeds really only need 4 things. They need something to grow in, they need warmth, they need water, and once they're up they need lots and lots of sunlight. So fill up your punnets with seed raising mix and firm it down with your fingers. There's nothing too scientific about this. And now I'm ready to sow some seeds. Now, the number one reason that seeds fail when you're sowing them in pots is because you've put too much seed raising mix on top. So really you just want to take the seeds out of the packet, pop them on top of the seed raising mix, and then really lightly cover them, just a little sprinkle. And then it's really important to keep them moist, but you don't want to be watering them with a garden hose, so I just use a little mister bottle, give them a squirt. When you finish sowing all the seeds you want, the really crucial next step is to make sure they don't dry out. And I have a clever little tip. If you don't have a glass house, you can just get yourself a cheap plastic container like this, pop your seed trays in, and this just keeps the humidity up. It's a very low-tech, instant mini glass house. One last tip about sowing seeds, and that's don't be too tidy at this time of the year. If you actually get down on your hands and knees and weed your garden, you'll see all these amazing treasures that have just popped up on their own. In my garden I've got things like Orleia, giant candy tuft, loads of forget-me-nots, honesty, and look at these hellebores. I didn't need to sow any of these. Nature did all the work for me, and all I have to do is pot them up. Picture this. You've just bought your first home and you've finally got your very own patch of garden to lovingly tend. But there's never enough time and you're not even sure you know what you're doing. Sound familiar? Well, what if there was a wonderful gardening series that sent in your very own green-fingered guardian angel? Guess what? There is.
Hi, I'm Justin Newcombe, and for the last 20 years I've been working as a landscape designer. But for the next 10 weeks I'll be working on a small urban garden to redesign, rework and revitalise it. Now, these urban spaces have become really expensive, they're getting smaller and smaller, and we've got less and less time to enjoy them. So we've got to make sure we make the most of what we've got. And design plays a huge part in that. Well, here we are at Matt and Braden's house in Central City, Auckland. Well, it's your classic cobble driveway. These plants are interesting though. These Hebes, you know, that's a really good look, and obviously someone cares about plants here. I mean, the lawn's not exactly to die for. And as for the deck, well, to be honest, I think the deck's the least of our worries. Wow, I knew the neighbours were renovating, but I had no idea they were going this far.
Hey, Justin.
I see you've established the demolition look. What do you need me for?
We thought you needed all the help you could get. Hey, come on up. Hello. Hey, Justin.
Good to see you.
How you doing?
Yeah, excellent. All action here.
Totally. We don't do things by halves.
I reckon. What a mess. How do you feel about it?
Believe it or not, the garden here actually looked quite nice.
Yeah, just 2 days ago, everything was sweet. The border gardens planted by Matt were well established and looking good.
We've retained a couple of the main trees that we inherited when we bought the place, mainly the feijoa. There's a mandarin tree, but everything else has just been guesswork for me. Like, I'm not that skilled, so I've been lucky so far.
Found out that our neighbours are doing some renovations with this rather large kind of eyesore here, and in the process reducing our boundary. That means though that our beloved loquat tree's going.
The fence is going to be going in, same line with the loquat trees. We're not losing much, but it is going to need a bit of rework in terms of how that part of the garden is going to be structured.
It's pretty much all go.
It's an opportunity to start again because we've got no choice. They've moved all the plants from this side out into a nice pile. There is some I'd like to save, but I'm not sure what's worth saving or not. So it'd be great to get your help on that.
Should we pop down and have a look?
Yeah, sure.
So this is the, plant cemetery, is it?
The hospice, maybe.
Things like this, where the root ball is tipped over,
Yeah.
like that, that's probably a bit marginal, you know, because these shallower roots get torn away from the trunk.
Right.
And it can be saved, and we put it back in the ground and give it a go. But it's one of those things where, like, how much effort do you put in? You know, you could spend a lot of time, a lot of energy, and a lot of money trying to save something like that. The Ko-Fi, that looks reasonably established. How long has that been in the ground?
This is about 4 years old, this one.
That looks a bit marginal to me. There isn't much root ball there for a 4-year-old tree. And again, it's got, you know, they've got those sort of shallow fibrous roots that go across the ground.
Right.
And they don't really like being disturbed. Lemon tree, actually that looks pretty good. There's a pretty good root ball there.
So you can save our summer drinks, Doctor.
Oh, yeah, totally, but there won't be any more summer drinks till next summer. And no drinks today till the work's done. To save the precious plants, all those tender roots need to be covered. The root is in the ground, you know, wet conditions, and it's in the dark all the time. So if you have it exposed like this, it's really out of its element.
Now, one of the great pleasures of gardening for me is sharing my favourite plants with other people. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to learn how to take cuttings. Now, these gorgeous perennial wallflowers were a real favourite of my grandmother Clarice. In all the old photos of her farm garden, you see them lining the front path. And I think it's really special that just by taking cuttings, I can have a memory of her in my garden. Growing plants to swap with other people is really fun, and when you're taking cuttings, you've got absolutely nothing to lose because it costs nothing. All you need to do is get your original plant. So we'll go in and snip about 10 centimetres, cut off the flowers, and then strip off most of the leaves. And you don't have to be too careful with this. Just break them off, trim it up. And by taking off most of this foliage, what it means is that it doesn't lose too much water through its leaves while it's growing roots. Simple as that, a prepared cutting, just pop it into the ground or into a pot of potting mix. Now, one thing I've found in all my years of gardening is that cuttings seem to do best if you poke them in close to their mum's feet. I guess they're like kids in that respect. And then all you need to do is wait. About 6 weeks, these should have lovely little roots. And in fact, I've actually got a few here that I took about a month ago, so we'll see. Look at that, it's a baby new plant. Now you've just got to keep your green fingers crossed and hope your cuttings take root. Now, if you want to take heaps and heaps of cuttings of one thing, say you've got a Buxus ball that you want to turn into a hedge, or you want to pot up some perennials to mass plant, you can actually dip the cuttings in a commercial rooting gel as you work, just to increase your chances. But if you have a willow tree nearby, you can make your own. Willow water might sound like a witch's brew, but there's actually some pretty good science behind it. As far back as the 5th century, Hippocrates was prescribing willow bark if you had a headache. And what do you know? A few centuries later, it was the original source of aspirin. Now, the other notable thing about willows is that they grow really easily from cuttings. If you take a stick like this and shove it in the ground, you'll get a free tree. So to make willow water, you need the new spring growth, and you don't need the leaves, so you just strip all these off. Then you want to just cut the new stems into lengths about 1 inch long, pop them into a bowl with boiling water, steep them overnight. The next day when you come back to this, you can just strain out this willow because it's done its work and all the goodness is in the water. And then when you want to do some potting up of cuttings, you just dip them into the willow water and straight into the mix. It's easy as that. And the other thing you can do with the willow water is you can actually put it in your mister bottle and use it to spray your seedlings as they come up. It's just an immunity booster. Or if you want a really no-fuss method for propagating herbs, things like mint and basil, you don't even need to pot them up. Just fill up some glasses with willow water, drop in some sprigs, and what do you know? They'll grow roots for you. Easy as that. Here in the Hunua Ranges, I share my country garden with a couple of kuni pigs, some free-range chooks, a couple of kids, and of course some curious cows. But what if you had 1 million visitors traipsing through your backyard each year? What would you show them? New Zealand Gardener editor Joe McCarroll caught up with my great mate and one of New Zealand's most respected plantsmen, Jack Hobbs.
So we're in the Auckland Botanic Gardens. What is there here?
There's a hell of a lot of plants.
How many, do you know?
Oh, well, there's certainly more than 10,000. We have more than 40,000 different groups of plants in our botanical records database. Botanic gardens are becoming far more about conservation, research and education.
Yeah.
And working, if you like, in an environmentally sustainable way. That's what botanic gardens all around the world are doing.
One of the things I think is a benefit of gardening is the people you meet. Gardeners are such generous people with their knowledge and with...
I actually think of gardening as more about people than plants, actually. I mean, it's both, and it's the bringing of the two together. But there's so many wonderful people in gardening, and people that are so generous with their plants, with their ideas, and that fellowship that just having that passion in common brings.
Oh, the hellebores are looking fantastic, Jack. Setting the camellias off brilliantly. How did you pick the ones you're growing here?
Well, what we've gone for are the very best garden performers from Japonicas, Reticulatas, Sasanquas, small-leaved hybrids and so forth. Yeah, the star performers are what you see in this garden. But of course, the problem that we've got now, as with the entire country, is camellia petal blight. It's just really decimating camellias. So it's really spring-flowering camellias like this Japonica that have really been hammered by the petal blight. I mean, you can see here, I mean, just absolutely destroys the flowers.
So is there anything that can be done?
Well, funny you should ask. We are working on a program to breed some resistant camellias, and Massey University have identified some species that don't get petal blight or are very resistant to petal blight. We're crossing them with some of these very showy Japonicas and so forth, trying to produce some that are both attractive and resistant to petal blight. We have over 60 species of wild camellias. It just shows the importance of a collection like that at a botanic gardens.
What do we have here, Jack?
Well, this is a camellia species. It's called Minutiflora. Gorgeous thing, I think. It's an example of a camellia species that I think could create some amazing hybrids. Beautiful flower colour, very interesting habit. I mean, a weeping kind of a habit. I mean, camellia species have just got so much to offer. Some of them have bronze new foliage, some of them have fragrance. So I think we'll see a whole new generation of camellias coming from these species. This garden's called Native Plant Ideas, just showing people how you can use plants in ways that they might not have thought of. such as this Muehlenbeckia Astonite. These have been beautifully crafted by our collection curator, Kerry Gilbanks, and also all the plants in this garden have been selected for great performance. I mean, this Nikau comes from the Chatham Islands. Tough as, beautiful form, so that's what the garden is about.
It's interesting looking around. It's got so much more colour.
Yeah, I mean, it's what people typically do with perennial borders and that type of thing. We've done it with natives, just to show you can do it. They're part of our culture, they're part of who we are, and there's just so many opportunities to make more of them. And that's what gardening's about. I mean, it's an art form. And if you pursue it as an art form, you'll end up with some wonderful effects, and effects that, you know, really inspire people and that create wonderful places for people to be in.
Well, it's so beautiful. I don't know how I can bear to leave, Jack. I'll rest on the pillows of Muehlenbeckia.
Oh, I don't think you'd rest for long. It would give a fairly fitful sleep, I would imagine.
Joe McCarroll with our perennial favourite, Jack Hobbs. And we'll be back visiting with Jack later in the series. But coming up after the break, I'll show you how you can grow heaps of plants for nothing, simply by harnessing the mantra of divide and rule. And we'll be back at the bomb site backyard.
What do we think about the Feijoa tree?
Very attached.
As well as sowing seeds and taking cuttings, you can also propagate many perennial plants simply by taking to them with a spade or a fork. This is called division, and it's how you create a big garden on a small budget. The most obvious example of division would have to be strawberries. Every year, the parent plants produce these little babies off to the side, which we call runners, and you can just dig them up and plant them out. And I started off with 12 plants in this bed last year. I've got 13 more that I've already done here. And look, flowers already. These are going to be ready to eat in about 6 weeks. And of course, almost all bulbs are propagated by division. So if you want heaps of daffodils in a field or you want more bluebells, just dig up the clumps every couple of years, divide them up and replant them. One of my all-time favourite perennials is a gorgeous orange helenium called Moorheim Beauty. And it doesn't look like much at this time of the year, but trust me, come summer, it is sensational. And the good thing about clump-forming perennials like this is that to divide them up, all you need to do is get your spade or your fork down in there and wriggle the root ball free, haul it out of the ground, give it a bit of a shake to get the dirt off, and then get in there with your hands and you can start to prise it apart. And this is the perfect time of the year to give this a go because most perennials are just coming back into growth. So I better go and pot these up.
Hello. Earlier in the show I met Matt and Braden, who have got a small backyard in central Auckland they need redesigned and restored thanks to the neighbours' renovations. Lots of plants have been dug up and the guys are hoping to save what they can.
Don't like just ripping up plants and throwing them away. There's been a lot of time and energy putting these things in place, so that's just a personal thing for me, letting go and just seeing what options or alternatives are out there.
What about the avocado?
It's a pleasant mistake. I threw a pip out one night after making a salad and discovered after a few weeks we had a little seedling, and I know that they're quite hard to grow from seed.
Yep.
So I just thought I'd keep it.
Like, that's potentially a really big tree, you know. It could take up this whole backyard.
Okay,
So-
not attached to the avocado at all.
What about the mandarin?
Really love the mandarin. Again, it's nice to be able to look out the kitchen window and see some colour. I can see there's a few problems with it.
There's a bit of dead growth and that kind of thing. So maybe we need to look at that and try and remedy that. What do you think about vegetables?
I think I like to eat them. Never really given a lot of thought. I think we had a go once and
Yep.
got a bit scared by it.
But we're lucky in this situation. We're standing here in the late afternoon. We've got all this beautiful sunshine. So to me, this is a really good place to start. Things will be much easier. The vegetables will grow more quickly and taste better. What do we think about the Feijoa tree?
Very attached to the tree. I just think it's quite a nice thing to look out the window and break up the distance between us and the neighbours behind us. The obvious thing though is it actually gives us a heap of fruit.
Yeah, okay. Regardless what stays and what goes in this garden, it still has to be redesigned and rebuilt. So I have to know what I'm working with. First thing is probably just to draw the side up. That deck goes out. Now I'm going to measure up and scale it when I get back to the office. Whoa, this back fence is a bit of a disaster. I've got to say the guys are bearing up very well. They've had their backyard destroyed in front of their eyes, and they don't know yet what I've got planned. So I'm thinking a gift basket of garden goodies will cheer them up. But I've got some presents for you.
Oh, wow.
Far out.
The first thing is gloves. Husqvarna has made these out of goat leather.
Fancy.
Really fancy. Always wear gloves, so it's really important.
And microgreens,
Excellent. Fast germination.
2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I'm going to head off back to the office, draw it up and come up with a really beautiful master plan.
Can't wait to get started.
Well, today I've shown you 3 easy ways to propagate your own plants from seeds, cuttings and division. And this is the payoff. Anytime I like, I can go and pick a huge bunch of flowers from my garden and know that it cost next to nothing. And in fact, I can even make money by selling them at the farmer's market. And that's almost our first show. We hope you've enjoyed it. For more information or to chat to us about the show, check out our Facebook page. And to sign up for our weekly digital magazine, email getgrowing@nzgardener.co.nz. Have a cracker weekend in your spring garden and don't forget to spend a little bit of time preparing the soil for next weekend's traditional start to the tomato season. See you next week.